There's James. Okay. So I'm going to share screen and we're going to get started. So today, the the uh, the big topic of today is going to be what happens, what do I do to talk to my students when they make a mistake? And that's what we're going to talk about and really work on. Not so much talk about, but do it today. So, I call these conversations or dialogues. And what I've done is created some like phrases that can really be of help. One of the things that's really going to help you is if you have the handout, number 6, printed out, we're going to be using that. We're also going to be really using the consonant chart that we've worked with before. So this whole thing of how do I speak to my student when they have made a mistake is really applicable to anything that you're teaching. So it doesn't matter if this is your literacy work or if it's science or if it's social studies or if it's teacher training, whatever it is, being able to give feedback instead of saying, no, you're wrong, do it again, or good job, really will change the way you teach. So this, I think, is one of the most critical things that we can work on together. So no matter what you're doing with your student in literacy, whether it's reading or spelling or working on phonemic awareness, they may make a mistake either pronouncing or representing the sound. And so we really want to work strongly, strongly, strongly on how do we deal with consonant and vowel dialogues. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is this is from another a teacher who was in my course in the spring, and the way that Tracy explained this whole idea of feedback dialogues or conversations is my student and I are walking down the road together in learning, and there's a fork in the road, and their thinking took them to the left, and my thinking took me to the right. So my feedback and questioning helps my student move back onto the road with me. Why is this also important? There's a really interesting theory called the self-teaching theory. It's by an Israeli researcher, and I'm trying to remember his name, and I will in a moment. But what he says is there's too many words in the English language for us to teach every single word to our students. So if we can teach them how to think about reading and spelling and correcting their mistakes, then we can teach them to be independent learners. So these self-correcting behaviors really help them to learn how to self-correct. And I've seen it so many times. People who use all of the ideas in the science of reading and do a really good job of teaching the articulation and teaching phonemic awareness, but they don't teach this self-correcting. And the difference is just enormous in what the students are able to learn and where they go in their learning. So essentially, the ideas of the way that we have to think in order to create this dialogue, this conversation, is very similar to what you have been learning for the last 10 days. First of all, we ground it in the articulation. And so we're going to be using the same types of questions that we use to teach our students, but now we're going to use those 4 assets of how we define a consonant, what part of the mouth we're using, whether it's the front or the back, the air and the voicing, we're going to use those to help us analyze when our student makes a mistake, because it's pretty much one of those areas that they might misconstrue. So we've had this chart a couple of times now, and we're going to refer back to it again and again and again tonight. So on the left is the airflow, on the right is the key part of the mouth that's being used to form the letter. So I also created this handout that you have, which says, this is how you can direct your thinking. When a student makes a mistake, let's say that they say the sound of, the sound V is made or written with the letter F. Well, if we go back here and find the letter F and V on this chart, you can see that they're a consonant pair. We use the same part of our mouth, the same location, the same air, except F and V, one is voiced and one is unvoiced. So if I use this worksheet, I can say, oh, they've got the correct use of the lips and the teeth. They've got the correct air, but it's the voicing where they made a mistake. So this is how I'm trying to like put my thinking out for you to use. So one of the first things that I ask my student, even before I go through all that analysis for them, I want to ask them, what are you thinking of for this letter? Or what are you thinking of for this sound? Because what they're thinking might be totally different than what I'm thinking. And so I have to be able to take what they're thinking into consideration. And then I could fill out the chart in my mind quickly or even on a piece of paper. And I could say, your answer tells me that you thought correctly about the part of the mouth you're using and about the air, because that's what they were correct with. Let's talk about voicing. And then we could go through the questions and be able to correct that. Let's try some of this. I'm going to demonstrate it. And then what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you guys practice in pairs. Okay. So the student sees the letter P and they know the name of the letter. They say it's a P and they say the sound is B. So if we look at our chart here, we can see that P and B are a consonant pair. So they are using the correct part of their mouth, the lips, and they're using the correct air, but again, the voicing is incorrect. So I have to talk with them about voicing. And I would say when you say the sound B, is it voiced or unvoiced? And I'd have them feel it. And then I could say, you are correct. But P, because they don't know the sound of it, I'm going to tell them P says P. Okay. So if they don't know the sound of a letter, I have to tell it to them, because how are they going to, I can't ask a question that's going to help them get to the sound. Here's another example. The student sees the letter B and they know the name of the letter, but they say that it says T. So I'm going to compare B and T. Can anybody tell me what could be correct about saying that B and T are the same? I like, Cassie, you immediately felt your throat, right? So are they the same voicing?
I think so.
Okay, can you say it out loud for yourself? B and T. Are they both quiet, or are they both noisy, or is it a mix?
Are you asking if they're voiced or unvoiced, kind of?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Ta.
Okay.
I
So,
can't tell right now for some
okay, I can
reason.
tell you, I can tell you why you can't tell. You just said ta. And when you say ta, you're saying two sounds. The sound of T is
Um,
t. Now feel it go t.
Uh, okay.
Okay.
B is voiced and T is not.
Exactly. Exactly. So they've got the voicing wrong, don't they? What about Kayla? When you say b and t, are you using the same part of your mouth?
One you're using your lips and the other you're using your teeth.
So that they're not the same, are they? Right?
Nope.
But what about the air, Chanel? B, t. Is it the same or different? Feel it? B.
It feels different.
How is it different? Explain it to me.
One's more of a puff and one's more like held back.
Okay, so we have two choices. We have puff and stream, okay? And you're right. Which one are you thinking is being held back?
The T.
Okay, and it's because it's unvoiced, and you're right. We're holding the air and then letting it go because it is a plosive. So feel this, go s, and feel p, p. Now do b. Did they feel the same? B, p. The air.
Yeah.
Now say t. Did they feel the same?
Yeah, they're both a puff.
They're both a puff. So between, if we've got our question here, if we've got our mistake here, that they say the letter B and they say it says the sound T. The voicing is incorrect and the part of the mouth is incorrect, but the air is correct. So what I have to talk about is I can say to them, you know, B and T, they have different voicing, and B uses the lips to push out the air, and T uses the tongue. B is voiced and T is unvoiced. And then I have to tell them that B says B, and the reason I have to tell them is they don't know it. Okay? But I really want them to feel the difference and see the commonalities and differences so that they may not be hearing the difference, but they sure can feel it. So here's another one. The student hears the sound and states that TH makes the sound, that sound. So let's go back to our chart and let's say, what could be correct about that? What could be incorrect? So if I look on the chart, F and V and TH are both fricatives. Fricative means there's a stream of air coming out and something in your mouth is making friction with that air. When you say Raven, what are you using to make that friction? The lips or the tongue?
Lips.
And when
Lips.
I agree. And when you say Madeline, what are you using to create the friction? Lips or tongue?
For TH,
Yes,
your tongue.
I agree. It's sticking out there, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So in order to correct them, I can say to them, you know what? The air for the letter, for the TH and the sound is coming out in a continual stream. You're correct about that. F blocks the air with the lips and the teeth, and TH uses the tongue. They're both unvoiced. That's what I have to think about and then tell them about it. And I have to tell them that the letter F makes that sound because obviously they don't know it yet. Do you see how when they make a mistake, it's a complete opportunity to practice everything that you've taught them when you initially taught them? Okay, let's look at one more. slide. So what we want to analyze is we want to analyze what is correct about their mistake, what is not correct, and then in our feedback, you want to tell them about what is it, the part of the mouth, the location, the voicing, or the air? And you have to say to yourself, what do I want to talk to them about? I have to be truthful. One of the things I want you guys to go through and really understand this dance, this dialogue. But when I'm in a situation with a student, I try to make my response and dialogue as short and sweet as I possibly can, so I keep their attention and keep them the lesson moving on. But I have to do this thinking in order to be able to do that. I would like you all to take a minute and say, okay, we're on a whole new subject. What are the key ideas so far that you've heard this evening about when your student makes a mistake? Can you just jot down a few notes and then let's review it together? I'm doing a formative assessment, aren't I? I'm seeing if what I said communicated to you accurately. And of course, you can use your slides and mine.
You want us to put it in the chat?
That would be great. Thank you. That was succinct, Megan. And absolutely critical. Megan said self-correcting is the key, and I would add to learning. That if we can learn from our mistakes, having a growth mindset, we're really far ahead of the game.
I really noticed that in my last lesson with my friend that her correcting herself really helped her to understand what I was trying to teach her. So I would definitely say I've even already seen it. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And Isabella is, I really like her response. So what she said was, it makes mistakes something positive, and it gives you the opportunity to address the exact point of confusion. And that's really well worded, the exact point of confusion. It's also something that at the beginning of when I start working with a student, I talk about the fact that making a mistake is totally everybody's going to do it, and we're going to use it for learning. And actually, the research says when you make a mistake and then it's corrected immediately with specific feedback, you get more learning than not. Okay. Logan says it's important not to discourage them, and I agree with that. One of the things Madeline talked about is we give them an opportunity to know what they did correctly. It also helps to pinpoint where they made the mistake, and then they can correct it. It's kind of like, oh, no, that's wrong. Try again. Won't help at all. So if we can pinpoint where the mistake is and how it is, it really, really, really helps. There's a whole set of research that talks about when you do frequent testing and give feedback to students, they learn more than if you hold feedback for a long time and test infrequently. Raven, I agree. I completely agree. It can be more beneficial to teach by showing and doing than telling. I completely agree. Okay. And Micah, or Mika, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's one of the, is it Russian? Is your name Russian, Mika?
It's Finnish. It's Mika.
Mika, thank you. Correct me 10 times and I'll get it, okay? Okay, having them walk through their thought process and asking them questions can help them to self-correct. And we will understand what their confusion is. We can never assume that we know exactly what their mistake is if we don't ask them what they're thinking. Okay, excellent. Thank you guys. That was really gave me feedback to understand that you're understanding this process. So now what I'm going to ask us to do is I'm going to break us into groups. And this is important. Does everybody have a printout of the slides, or do you have to take a screenshot of this slide? Because if I go to a room, you won't be able to see it. So you might want to take a screenshot. So here are the mistakes that I want you to work through, as many with your partner as you can. A student spells the word fish, V-I-S-H. The student says they're using their tongue and the air is coming out in a stream and it's unvoiced when they say f. When you have two lines diagonally, that means the sound of that letter. The student says they're using the back of their tongue to make t. Another one, G is voiced and they're using the front of the tongue and there's a puff of air. They see the letter S and they say sh. They see the letter D and they say b. They see CH and they pronounce it ter. So I don't expect that in 10 minutes you'll get through all of those. So some people might start at the bottom, some in the middle, and some at the top. And I'm going to stop sharing for a minute here. And I'm going to, let's see, how many people do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we're going to have 8 rooms. Or 7 rooms, and one of them, the mythological Russ, my husband's screen, will be in. Okay, let's see where. Where is this? Why am I having a hard time finding this? Breakout rooms. Okay. Okay, and we're going to take 10 minutes to do this. Any questions? Does everybody understand what to do? Okay, and do you guys have that printout and the sheet so you can use it to help yourself? No? Okay, I'm going to go back here for a minute and I'm going to ask you to take a screenshot of it so you have it. Okay. Okay, you need a screenshot of this one. And this one. Okay. Okay, let's go and Isabella, I am going to move you to room 7 so that you're with Cassie. Okay, 10 minutes, please. Okay, everybody's back. So let's talk about how that went and how you what you learned from that. Raven, do you want to start us off? What did you work on and who were you working with?
Sure. I was working with Madeline, right? I think I got that right.
Yes.
M name. Okay, cool. Um, we actually made it through all of them.
Wow.
But what we were like really stuck on was the CH making the TR sound.
Okay, good. Good.
'Cause
So,
we were saying how when we're talking in the moment, the both of us, we pronounce TR the same as CH. But like if we actually slow down to pronounce the word out, then we get the TR sound. And we were just talking about that.
okay, excellent. So what you were talking about is absolutely being on because when you make the sound in your mouth, you're using the front of your tongue, it's tapping up there, and it's putting a puff of air out, isn't it? And if you could do tur, it starts with the same front of the tongue behind the teeth and then quickly goes back into the back of the tongue. And that's one of the reasons that so many students will misspell CH with a TR or TR or vice versa. So Good on you. You guys really paid attention to how it was sounding and how you were using your mouth. Excellent. Okay. Kayla, who did you work with and what were there any challenging ones or questions?
I was working with Brooklyn and we made it through a few of them. I got a little bit interrupted because I just got a bed delivered by UPS. So I was like, give me a few minutes. I have a guy like carrying a giant package at my porch, but
Love it.
we were getting through. Yeah, we got through like 3 or 4 of them. But
Okay. Okay, good.
I
Good.
think just what was it? Oh, the back of the tongue one. We were like going back and forth between the back of the tongue and which letter was that?
Was it K
Okay.
and let me see, I'm going to share my screen.
T.
Yeah, it was the like
Yeah.
T sound with the back of the tongue.
Okay. Okay. So if we analyze that and say to ourselves, well, T, what part of the mouth does that use, Brooklyn?
It's like the front of the tongue behind your teeth.
Exactly. So they've got the tongue part correct. It's the spatial location. So I can say, yeah, you know, you do use your tongue. Is it the front of the tongue like D, or is it the back of the tongue like G? And then they'll be able to feel the difference and be able to answer you with the correct answer by feeling it, by the way you put the question out there. Okay, let's see. Jordan, who did you work with and what did you discover, do, etc.?
I worked with Logan,
Okay.
and we had a good time. We actually kind of talked about that T thing too, and how they make the other sound when the tongue's actually in the back of your mouth. And we kind of practiced it.
Mhm.
And then also we did like the G voiced in the front of the tongue puff, and it was, I don't know, it was interesting. It was cool. And then we did the SH, which was really cool too, because
Okay.
like, is that too much?
No. I was going to ask you a question about how you did the S and SH.
Oh, it was great. So I asked Logan to say the word snake.
Okay.
We kind of worked on that, and then also just kind of like how it's kind of like 2 letters, and how I was like a snake kind of makes the sound, and like that's perfect because you got that right on the sound, but then it sounds like there's another letter in there as well. So instead of saying it's like not be quiet.
Okay.
And we worked.
So my question is also, when you're talking about S and sh, what's the same about those two as far as the air?
Oh yeah, they're fricative as well.
They're both fricatives, right? So we've
Mhm.
got a stream of air coming out. Logan, what's the difference about the air? S, sh, feel that. Is it the same amount of air or a different amount of air coming out?
With SH, it's less.
And
Well, when you do it like that, then SH is more.
yeah, okay. And those are the sounds, right? Right? Okay. Jordan, what about the voicing between S and SH?
I think they're both unvoiced.
I agree with you. And Logan, what about how you're using your lips? When you say S, are your lips pulled back in a smile or are they pushed, puckered forward? S.
With their back
Uh-huh.
and they're puckered out.
Exactly. So not only did my question is, Jordan and Logan, did you do your snake and the digraphs and everything, but did you also talk about the other articulatory parts when you were correcting each other?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the essence of what we're doing here. Okay. So yes, it's nice to have, snake, and it is, a sibilant and it gives you the sound and all of that stuff, but it's the articulation features that we want to focus our students on most of all. Okay. Thank you guys. Jose, who did you work with?
I work with Chanel. and we covered most all of them. With the one we got confused with the CH and the TR.
Okay.
We weren't sure on like on how to do that one because we haven't heard. We both haven't heard any of the students like get
Yeah.
confused on that one. But I was wondering like how like what's the difference between those two sounds?
Absolutely. So I'm going to really try and be careful about this one. So one of the things, let's say that you ask them to spell the word chunk, okay? Chunk. And they spelled with TR. And so what I could say is, when you use TR there, that is really logical to me. Let's explore how you use your mouth when you say tur. When you say tur, what's the first thing you feel blocking the air? Is it your lips or your tongue? Tur. Jose, lips or tongue?
Sure. Tongue.
Yes. And is it the front of the tongue or your back of the tongue for the first feeling before it moves?
Sure. The front.
Exactly. Now, once you have that in the front, your tongue moves back to make the R sound. Okay?
Sure.
When I have this word CHUNK, the CH says ch. And the reason I tell them is that they're obviously confused about that. So I'm going to tell them the sound. When you say ch, what part of your mouth are you using your lips or your tongue for ch?
Ch. My tongue.
Ah, so isn't it interesting that the T in the TR and the CH use the same part of your mouth, and they really don't feel that different or sound that different. In this word, chunk, we're using the CH. Okay, so it's some being able to tell the students, but it's also asking the questions. Okay. So one of the things that I would really, really like for you guys to do this week when you're working with your students is to if they make a mistake, consider it a golden opportunity for you. And really say, you know, one of the things that I'm working on and want as a teacher to become more efficient at is when you make a mistake, I'm going to talk with you about it, and I may go slow for the beginning, okay? I can do this stuff in my sleep because I've done it for like 30 or 40 years. But I want you to take it slow and really work through the dialogues, asking yourself what is correct and accurate about their mistake, what's incorrect, and how can I ask them the questions, the 4 questions do I have to ask about the part of the mouth, the location in the mouth, the air, or the voicing. And pick the one that they made the mistake with to ask them about. Don't ask them about everything. One way of doing this is this particular slide that's in your handouts. And sometimes I ask teachers to literally make themselves like a step card, a card that you could have with you when you're teaching. And you say, you want to tell the student what they spelled or read or said, was the letter, the sound correct? I agree that you're using the front part of your mouth, your tongue when you say t. And then you're going to say, oops. There's an important idea here that I want to talk about, and then you're going to ask a question with 2 alternatives. Okay? Any questions about this and operationalizing it for yourself? Okay, so before we take the break, the last thing that I want to talk about, and I'm going to solicit ideas from you, is, well, how are you going to tell your kids that you're going to be entering into these conversations? So what I have done in the past is to say, when you make a mistake, I'm going to tell you what you did accurately. And then we're going to talk about the ideas and the facts that relate to your mistake. And then I'm going to ask you a question so you can correct it. That's what I do. But you guys are creative. So what's another way that you might introduce to the student that you're working with this whole idea of conversations around mistakes? And I'm going to let you think for a minute, but then unmute yourself when you have an idea and share it with everybody else, and then steal from each other.
I have that idea.
Okay.
I think that when you notice a mistake from your student, giving them like two options, one that includes the mistake and one that is correct, and giving them the opportunity to identify the mistake on their own, rather than just telling them this is what you did wrong, here's how to fix it. Maybe that way they can see it more clearly.
Okay. And I would be really interested, Isabella, to see how that works with your student this week. Okay. Because that's like the top of the mark. It's interesting. One of my really good friends did a lot of work with this mistake correcting for accuracy in fluency. And once we teach all of these ideas that we're teaching, we want our students to become automatic with doing the different skills. So she had a whole series of prompts, and in order to move from her correcting the student to the student correcting themselves. And you just had, how can I give my students the opportunity to start learning that? Okay. Someone else's idea.
I think you might be able to introduce it like in the metaphor of a game.
Okay.
Just tell them like, oh, okay, so like sometimes when I play games, like I want to win. I want to do like a lot better than I did before. You know, I want to win. I want to do well. And it really helps to know how I'm doing in the game. Otherwise, I don't know if I'm doing good or if I'm doing, you know, not so good. So I think I can help you by letting you know, as we're kind of trying to beat our own best scores, to let you know kind of what might need some fixing. And it'll help you to be better. It'll help me to be better. And I think we can just have a good time with it.
I think that is an exceptionally useful way of explaining it to students. And it's also one of the reasons that students who play different computer games really get into understanding these feedback dialogues really well. Okay. Okay. Someone else? Yes, please, Logan.
I mentioned earlier about in the chat about not discouraging the student, and I think a good way to do that is what's known colloquially as a compliment sandwich, where you compliment them on the aspects that they have correct, and then you assert the correction, and then you kind of reaffirm what they had correct.
I like it. I like it. Okay. I'd never heard that sandwich before. Okay. Kayla, how are you going to explain it to your student?
I've been mulling it over. I think, well, probably kind of similar. It was kind of similar to what Logan was saying. I'd probably just reinforce what they did accurately. So, like, you did a great job with the, if they got the error right, or if they got like the mouth shape. And then I would just start asking like leading questions to help them figure out maybe where the correction needs to happen.
Okay. And if I may be so bold as to say, when you're giving them information about what they did correctly, instead of saying they did a great job, and I'll tell you why I'm saying this, we are all taught to say to people, not only our students, wow, that was so great. Oh, you're so smart. Oh my gosh, that's, that's great. Good job. One of the things that we know from research about academic self-esteem and also mindsets is that backfires on us because kids don't believe it. And that leads them to being in a more of a fixed mindset. So what we want to say is, I see that you were thinking accurately about this and this and this and this. Let's talk about that. Okay. And I am the first one to admit there are times when I say great and good job and get all kinds of excited about something. But giving feedback instead of praise will get you a whole lot further. And it helps our students to trust us that we're being honest with them. Okay, one more person, please.
Maybe asking them to explain their thought process and telling them, at what points that they were correct. And the more you use this language of like in the like the rhythm that people have talked about, like of asking the questions, they'll start to go through that same process as they explain their thought process. And then they'll be able to be like, oh, wait, I did this and I should have done this.
Exactly. So one of the things is once you teach your kids how to do this by your example and even making a step card, showing what you're doing and the steps to doing it, one of the things that you would really see if your students have integrated this well is if you make a mistake and they can correct you. And kids love to correct our mistakes. Okay? So this whole idea of the mistake dialogue with the consonants, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our 10-minute break here. Then we're coming back and we're going to do with vowels, is really a critical part of what we're doing in teaching students to become independent readers and spellers. Okay, so let's take our 10-minute break, guys, and I will see you back in 10. Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to remind you guys about before we get to roaring out of here at the end of our time this afternoon, evening, is that I want you to be using the assessment things that we worked on Tuesday of working with your students and seeing if they know the names of the consonants and the vowels, the sounds, having a handwriting sample, and then writing those up. So some of you wisely said, well, Sasha, if I can work with an adult, it's going to be easier for some things. For this week, if you can have a child or an adolescent instead of an adult to do this with, you might get more information and you might get better practice. And if you could do me the favor of handing them in by Monday, then I can give you feedback, because that's something that I'm going to do each week. I'm going to give you feedback about what you write to me. So that would be of help to me. And I am going to be in Oregon next week and teaching some teachers in Klamath Falls. So it's going to be a busy week for me. And I will be teaching from my hotel room in Klamath Falls on Tuesday and Thursday with all of you. Okay, let's look at how we do the same kind of conversations with our students around vowels. And the reason that the consonants have more distinct differences than the vowels do. And so it is very, very common that our students make mistakes discriminating between the different single vowels. So one of the ways of helping them is really by asking about the jaw and the lips and how open or closed the mouth is, and always using the single vowel staircase as your rubric, as your way of speaking to them. So one of the things that I'm going to ask you guys to do when you do your breakout rooms, because we're going to do that again, is to make on a piece of paper the single vowel staircase so that you have it to use when your student whom you're working with, one of your colleagues, when you're analyzing how to deal with mistakes. And so one way of talking about it, just as we talk about the consonants, you can say, is your jaw open like ah, or is it closed like I? Is it, are your lips smiling like I or relaxed and open like So you can use those alternate questions with the single vowels again, and we're using the same type of thinking. What did my student do correctly, and what did they do incorrectly, and where? And then how are they using their lips and jaw to make the vowels? So let's do a few together, and then we'll go through and have you do some errors together. So always asking, what are you thinking that this vowel letter sounds like? And then using the sound that the student has told you that the letter makes, and say, when you say, let's say it's the sound of ah. When you say the vowel sound ah, how open or closed is your jaw? Will someone do this with me? Brooklyn, will you do this with me?
Yeah.
Thank you. When you say the vowel sound ah, how is your jaw open like ah, or is it closed like I? Ah.
It's more closed, I would say.
Okay, okay. And what about the shape of your lips? Is it smiling like I, or is it open like ah? Ah.
Closer to the smiling.
Okie dokie. So where would that tell you that this sound would go on the staircase? Would and if we have the letters, it's good. So if we're saying ah, is it going to be up near the top or down near the bottom or somewhere in between those?
Somewhere in the middle.
Exactly. So let's say these together. I, ah. Can you say that with me?
Ah.
Which one of those three makes the ah sound?
The letter A.
Exactly. And then you can compare it to what they were looking at and say, oh, is that the letter A there, or is it a different letter? So what you're doing is you're using that concept of the single vowel staircase, asking how your mouth feels, and then where should it be on the staircase, which helps them to use the staircase as their mnemonic. Okay. And what I just said is written here on this particular slide. So if you haven't printed out your slides for today, I would say take a screenshot, guys, because you're going to use it with your partner when you're correcting mistakes. Chanel, do you need me to leave it up because you're copying it?
It's okay. I have most of it.
Okay, okie dokie. Okay. So, the teacher and students say the sounds on the staircase. You note the letter that corresponds with that sound, and then say, is that the letter you see in this word? So that's the way of moving to correct it. Another way of dealing with a vowel mistake is using the letter that's on the page. So if we had the word cop, okay, and we don't want O-cop, we want cop. So we could say, what is the vowel in this word? And Jose, can you tell me the vowel that's in this word, COP?
Yes. O.
Okay, now we're going to go back to the staircase. Where do you see the letter O on the staircase? Is it at the top, number 1, or in the middle, or at the bottom?
At the bottom.
And what does that tell your jaw to do? Is your jaw going to be closed or open when you're saying this letter O?
Open.
I agree. And so let's go down and say these sounds. Ah. Please repeat with me. Ah. And so the O says ah. Then I could take you back here to this word and say ah. No. And say, if the O says ah, can you now read this word?
Cop.
Exactly. So do you see that those are kind of like the opposites, right? One, they pronounced the sound of a vowel incorrectly, so we find out where on the vowel staircase that particular vowel is, and then we compare it to what's on the page. And it's almost the opposite. We look at the page, say, oh, what letter is that? Let's figure out how to say it. Okay, so let's see here. So here's another example. And then I'm going to have you guys do this next mistake and then in partners, okay? Let me see one thing here. Yes. Okay. So the students, you show the student the letter A, and they either don't know how to, the sound, or they don't know how to pronounce it. So this is what I would do. I would say, the name of this letter is A. Let's find it on the staircase. So let's look at the staircase here. Cassie, will you do this one with me? So the letter A, where do you see the letter A on the staircase?
The middle.
Exactly. So are your lips going to be and teeth going to be very closely sitting close to it? Bad question. Are your lips going to be closed? Are your teeth going to be close together? Or are they going to be somewhat open?
They're gonna be somewhat open.
Okay. So that position on the staircase says my jaw's going to be open, my teeth are going to be separated a little. Are your lips going to be pulled back in a hard smile or a little bit open?
A smile.
And it's going to be a soft smile, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to say these sounds with you. Please repeat them and we'll figure out what the A sounds. I'm doing this because my student doesn't know the sound. I've got to tell it to them. I, a. Can we say that together?
I, a.
And so what's the sound of the A? Exactly. So what you're doing is literally reinforcing that whole idea of what you taught them when you taught them the vowel circle, aren't you? The vowel staircase. Okay, so let's go here. Here's the dialogue. What does this position tell on the staircase tell you about how to use your mouth? What about your lips, your jaw, and then saying it together? So this is what I'd like you guys to do. I'd like you to use the staircase. I'd like you to use these two dialogues. And I would like each of you, before you start talking with your partner, to make up 2 mistakes. Okay? And then go through those together. And saying, you know, what is correct about their mistake, what is incorrect, and how are you going to clarify and correct it. So my mistake might be saying, I'm looking at the word cop and I pronounce it cup. So those are really close on the staircase. And that's the kind of mistake that you're really going to see a whole lot. My first question would be, what are you thinking of for this vowel? My second would be, let's find this letter on the staircase. Let's compare it. Or take their mistake, find the letter, and compare it to what's written. You understand how to make a mistake with the vowel for your partner? Okay, let's get into breakout rooms. And I think that we're going to use the same ones that we did before. And let's say 7 minutes. Okay, guys? Was 10 minutes too long the last time or just right? Just right? Okay, let's do 10 minutes. Each person makes at least 2 mistakes and their partner is going to correct it and then switch roles. Okay, so everybody's almost back. Comments, reflections. Was this easier than the consonants? Was it more challenging? What do you think?
It was really hard to
Okay.
come up with a fake example.
Okay. Okay. But I'm sure you succeeded in the end, right?
Yeah, we were like working hard. I really liked my partner. She said she had a student that said one with like a W in front, like one,
Uh-huh.
and then one. And we were talking about that and how we'd like work through it. That's a tricky one. And we also did lip and lep because it and are like right next to each other. That was also tricky. We were
Yeah.
tricking ourselves.
Yeah, well, but that's really, really common because when you have students, they will often mix up I and eh. And I don't know if I showed you guys this, but there's a trick to do with your students with I and eh. So one of the things that I ask them to do is when you say I, can you get your whole pinky finger on the side in between your teeth or just the nail? I. Yeah. Which is it, Cassie? Whole finger or just a nail?
Just your nail.
So when you say how much distance is there? Is it a pinky finger or just a nail?
It's about a finger.
Yeah. And that little trick of knowing how open or closed your jaw is can really help a lot of students because that distinction is so small. Okay. I want to comment also on the idea of one and one. Because now what we're getting into is not only sound, but where does this word come from and what does it mean? So one of my favorite resources for etymology is called Etym Online, ETYM Online. And if you look up a word like the word ONE, it shows you where that word came from, but also then you can start thinking about what's the relationship between the word one and the word only, because the word only also has that ON, just as the word one, ONE has, and they mean that singular concept. Another great one is the word two is very challenging for a lot of kids to learn. But if you look at the spelling of the TWO, and then you look at twine and the word twin, all of those have to do with two elements getting together. And so that can help students to say, oh, this is a wonky spelling, but if I look at what the history of this word is, I can really learn about why it's spelled that way. So it's like adding layers onto a cake of, we know the letters and the sounds. We're going to talk about phonemic awareness next week, but then we're going to also look at spelling patterns and the history of the word and the meanings of the part of it. Okay, other people, comments or reflections on what you did with your partner with the vowels and correcting mistakes.
We
Yes.
were having a hard time. So both of the examples are the mistakes that we chose. Like one was confusing I for E and the other one was confusing O for U. And because they were so close, we were having kind of a hard time figuring out like, we went through like each of the steps, but at the end, how do you, if they still think it's the wrong sound, even though they can see that that letter is in a certain spot on the staircase, how do you then go about like eventually correcting the sound?
Okay, eventually you have to tell them, okay? Because it's not something that they can come up with from a question. Like if I ask you how open or closed your jaw is, you can answer that question. But if I ask you, what's the sound? Is it I or ah? That's really hard. So in the end, after you've explored how the jaw feels and the lips feel and where it is on the staircase, you have to tell them the correct sound. Okay. And that's why you want to do as much practice with the staircase as you possibly can. So one of the things that I'll often do is after I've taught it first, then I'll have like letter tiles, like from Scrabble or something, and I'll say, oh, here's the staircase, let's figure out where it goes. And then I'll play as many different games as I can, and I'll have my students reading words with specific vowels that are challenging for them and spelling them and doing fluency drills. So, and that's kind of the next step that we're going to talk about, right after this of, oh, and now how do I make a lesson with all of this? Okay. Anybody else? Logan, how did you and Jordan do?
We did good. I was going to say that one thing that I was personally kind of having trouble with is describing the shape of the mouth with specifically the letter A. With it being in the middle, it's kind of hard to explain it without saying it's more in the middle. For the other ones you can kind of directly compare. Okay.
So one of the things that I would really suggest you guys do is to go onto the UFly website, and for each of the vowels as well as the consonants, but for each of the vowels they have cards that show the mouth, and you literally can use those pictures to compare it and to show the difference. Okay, which also then of course gets into some ways of practicing it, because you could take those pictures and you could cut them in half, and you could have a concentration game where they have to match the letter to the picture of the mouth, or the really insidious game of, I'm going to put my mouth in a certain shape. Can you tell me what letter it is? So if I said, what letter would that be, Logan?
O.
Yes, it would. And if I said, Chanel, what letter would that be?
Can you do that one more time? I want to say T, but I'm not sure.
You're making that in the picture here.
I don't know.
It would be. Anybody else got an idea? Yes, Megan? It's an I. It's an I. So I don't know from last time if you remember seeing those different pictures of the vowels, but it's a great thing to have as a resource when you're trying to do this. Okay, is the pictures really help. And also, like, I will have my students make their own pictures, and often I'll have them put it on the wall in their bedroom, and then they can play around with it. Okay. Any other things that anybody wants to bring up about the exercise of correcting vowels? We're going to be doing this many times in the next 2 months, because if you guys learn how to correct mistakes this way, it's going to change how you teach everything. It really is a valuable thing. Okay, the last thing that I'd like to speak about is lesson plans, and how all of what we're doing kind of gets into that. So in lesson planning, when you're teaching when you're teaching your students, either if it's on a one-to-one basis, or you're working in small groups, or you're working with a whole group, there's certain elements that you want to within, and I'm going to say not necessarily a day, because I don't think you can get all of this done in an hour. And actually, most of the people who are talking about how do you teach literacy, the best format is to have an hour and a half set aside in a daytime, but half an hour is for what we're working on, which is breaking the code, decoding, encoding. So you can't possibly do all of these different types of skills sets in half an hour every day. But you can bite off a little bit and do a lot in 30 minutes. So one of the programs that I am really loving, and I'm going to show you the book. I don't know if I've shown this to you before. It's from the University of Florida Literacy Institute. And this is the book, You Fly Foundations. And it has lessons for kindergarten, first, second, daily lessons. It's really a boon to teachers in the classroom. And everything that you're looking at here is part and parcel over 2 lessons of what they do. So when you're teaching, probably one of the most important things is to do activities, a couple of activities, to review what you've taught before. Because you can't teach something once and expect your students to remember it. So there's a concept in memory work called interleaving, Leaving. And I almost think about it, leaves piled up on each other in different configurations. And the way that's applied to memory is that you want to teach something and then teach something else, but then you're going to review both of those. And then the next week you're going to teach something, but you're going to review all those 3. And you keep cycling back and forth so that you get enough exposures in different activities for your students to come to an automatic phase. You've already seen how to teach a new concept. Next week, we're going to talk about phonemic awareness and reading and spelling of individual words. And we're going to do it with just what is termed decodable. In other words, every consonant and vowel that you've taught, you're going to use that to create words to read and spell. And there's another concept called decodable connected text. Decodable means that the vast majority of the words within the book that you're asking your student to read, you have taught to them. So they can get the practice of reading those words multiple times, but also they'll be able to think through the reading. And connected text means that it's just a story or several lines of information. Fluency is what kinds of activities can I have my students do to make those connections between the brain so solid that it's automatic. And then finally, doing a game. So based on that, this is what my lesson plan, when I'm teaching any age student, looks like for me. And there's a T here, which I don't know why there's a T. I have a very specific goal in what I'm doing. I ask what my students have to know before they learn this concept, reviewing, teaching something new, using that new idea to practice phonemic awareness, teach handwriting if we're teaching the consonants and the vowels, reading words, spelling words, fluency. Even in kindergarten, I start teaching my kids about where do words come from, and then playing a game and also home practice. So those are the elements. And by the end of our time together, you will be writing a lesson plan for your student. And we're going to learn each specific goal and activities and games and fluency for each thing that you could teach. In your handouts, in section 2 in the Moodle, you have a printout called Working Goals. These are goals that I made up and used for years and years at my clinic in Los Angeles, but also with the students that I taught in Oregon. And what they are is they are what I call working goals. They're not IEP goals. They're not big, oh, in a year my student will be able to gain a year's worth of reading. It's this is what I need to teach my student right now. So we've talked about the alphabet, and a goal for that would be my student will be able to name and write each letter of the alphabet with 90% accuracy for the sequence of creating it, the relative size, form, and spacing. So one of the things that you could be doing with your student this week is seeing which specific letters they need to learn how to write, and then have a goal for that. And then I could also have a goal that they write each letter of the alphabet with 90% accuracy for relative size, forming, spacing, upper, lowercase, print, or cursive. You've also begun to teach them. So one of the things you're going to be doing this week in your evaluating and assessing your student is which letters, the consonants and the vowels, do they know and are they accurate with? Which are they confused with? And which do they not know? And then you can make a goal to work on the ones that they don't know. I'm wondering if any of you in other classes have heard about Bloom's taxonomy or Bloom's revised taxonomy. Brooklyn, have you?
Not in a class, but it was something we did for like a training for the tutoring center.
Okay, can you tell everybody about Bloom's, and was it the revised that you got to study?
It's a good question if it was revised or not. Yeah, I'm not sure, but we basically talked about Bloom's taxonomy and like the zone of proximal development a lot for like assessing a student's skills and how we could best help them.
Okay. Okay.
If that helps. I don't think I have very like a great definition of it.
Okay, so has anybody else heard of this banana? No? Okay. So, and I can't remember Bloom's first name, but he's a psychologist, and what he was trying to explain to us as teachers is how do people learn? And so he said, we go through various stages of learning. And to me, I kind of think of it like learning, I think of it as a lake. So you can be on the very surface of the water in a boat, or you could be swimming in the water, or you could be with scuba gear and be all the way at the bottom of the lake or the ocean. And that's kind of how we also analyze and understand information. So when we're all learning something new, we really have to begin by just understanding the surface level. And Bloom calls that remembering. So it's the who, what, when, where, and why. If you're listening to me, or you're reading a book, or you're trying to explain to someone, that very surface description, that's remembering. And it's verbatim almost. It's like completely verbatim. What is the who, what, when, where, why that I'm reading from this particular text or listening to in class? So if I were working with my students with teaching them literacy, one way of working on the remembering level would be, can my student tell me what are the steps to making and assembling a vowel staircase, and then being able to put the consonant pairs. That's just complete remembering, isn't it? Another thing is, you could ask your students, can you name 3 groups of consonants that use the lips? Or can you name 3 groups of consonants that use a puff of air? So we're taking the concepts that we've taught them in the first week and reinforcing in the coming week, and just saying, did they get it? Can they explain it back to me? However, a deeper level is understanding. And what understanding means is it's taking those facts and concepts or procedures that you've learned and putting them in your own words. That takes a little bit more cognitive work, doesn't it? Giving me the verbatim answer from what you've read or something that's on one of the slides is different than you describing what's there in your own words. So one way of using an understanding level of processing information would be to ask your students to define what a consonant or a vowel is in their own words, or to make a 5x5 grid and to put 1 letter or consonant group in each cell and ask the students to supply other letters that might fit into that group also, and why. Do you see that takes more thinking than just answering what part of your mouth you use when you make your lips or your tongue? Or asking your students to give you 2 examples of single vowels and how they're the same and where they would be on the vowel staircase. If you have learned the surface information and you can say it in your own words, then you want to apply it and use that understanding. That's why I ask you guys to do the work together in groups, because if you apply the information, not just listen to me talk, you're understanding at a deeper level. So any kind of games that you could have your students work with, or any kinds of sorting exercises, or having them make up a game is really a good type of activity to do. A deeper level, according to Bloom, is analyzing. And that's looking for patterns. It's saying, you know, how are these 2 consonant groups the same or different? And what's the same about the P and B and K and G, or what's different? Takes a lot more thinking when you're comparing 2 ideas. Now, here's a question, and I'd love to see if we can figure this out together. So one of the questions is, L and R go together, don't they? Linguistically, articulation-wise. And my question is, why do we not consider them a consonant pair? And when you know that, put your thumb up. Okay, Megan, what's one idea? What is your idea of why L and R are not considered like the other consonants pairs?
I could be totally wrong on how I'm pronouncing that, but they're both, when I did it, they were both voiced.
Ah, and what do we know about the consonant pairs?
Typically one is voiced and one is unvoiced. They use the same mouth everywhere else.
Bingo. What's another reason? Can you feel that, Jose?
Yeah. When I was doing it, like my my vocal cords like shifted up and down. Like for L, like it goes down, and then the R like goes up. So
They're both voiced, aren't they?
yeah.
Oh, yes. Megan, you had a comment?
Oh, I just had another one, but if somebody else knows, they can go first.
Okay, okay. Logan, what was your thought?
Different position of the tongue.
I agree. Okay. And with the pairs, you're using the same positions, aren't you? Anybody else? Megan, is that what you thought of? Okay. So, do you see how much you had to think about what is a consonant pair and how does that relate to L and R and what's the same and what's different? It is a more complex level of thinking than just remembering. And then finally, evaluating is considered a very, very abstract and complex level. One of the things that I really like to do is to not tell my students how they did in a particular lesson, unless I'm modeling it to get them to know how to self-evaluate, but asking them, so how'd you do today? What did you do accurately? What was confusing? What do you need more of? What do you need less of? Because seldom are students asked to do that. And that's what we want them to do, is to be self-evaluating. So in your handouts, handout number 10, there is a whole page of different activities that you could be using with your students to deepen their understanding of the consonants and the vowels that you have taught them so far. And I encourage you to not just stay on the remembering level. One of the things that I say to my students often, your teachers teach on the remembering level, and they test on the applying, analyzing, and evaluating level. And if we don't give our students experience with all those levels, then we shouldn't be testing them on those levels. Okay, guys, we're done. We're done for another week. We have covered a lot of good stuff. You guys have really worked hard in learning how to deal with mistakes and evaluating your students. I look forward to seeing your descriptions of your students and what they know, confuse, and don't know. And next week we are going to do a dive into phonemic awareness. And it's again, a very, very important aspect of teaching our students, no matter what their age is, to read and spell accurately. Okay. See ya. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. You're welcome.